The committee has spoken, and we have our 12 teams. But Alabama, you still got that belt. Let's get into it.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Our intent was to eat. Our intent was to come eat and be hungry.
We're taking receipts, and we'll see you at the national championship.
The irony. The committee has spoken, and Brian Kelly, no, you are not going to the national championship. And that was decided a long time ago. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the South End Zone, the playoff reaction / conference championship recap episode. It's an action-packed, jam-packed live episode here. If anybody stops by, we appreciate you. If you stop by and you haven't already, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, all those good things. We appreciate everybody hanging out. Chad, we have our 12 teams.
Look, Tyler, the last time you broke that belt out, it was when y'all beat the piss out of Mississippi State.
Yes. No,
it didn't hit quite like it hit today.
This, let me see. Now that it's not like, the cold open, let's see if I can get a – there it is. There it is. It's like it popped that thing a little bit. And it's funny, Georgia players should bring out the belt. Let me tell you something. Literally in all my years, and this is no exaggeration, there is nothing more that brings more joy to my heart. Like there is no matchup on this planet that means more to me as a fan of my own team than when we're lining up across the guys with the A's on their shirt. There is nothing that is more exhilarating than us being able to play Alabama and just fighting for that chance to beat them. And the fact that we not only beat them, but dominated them.
Yeah.
-3 rushing yards.
Insane.
Like we dominated them. And the only way they scored was a garbage time, not even garbage time, but like mid-fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
The ref literally set a screen on our own.
Well, let's start with the play early on. Yeah, so you had early in that drive, though, before that, like way before that, you had the personal foul where two guys are kind of fighting a little bit, and you have the Georgia guy get the 15-yard penalty and not the Alabama guy. And otherwise, Alabama's punting the ball.
Right.
Then you have a batted ball that goes straight up into the air.
Yep.
Easily could have been an interception
that was
or an
crazy
incompletion.
that got caught by their guy.
And then it lands right in his hand.
That was the most Alabama thing I've ever seen was that catch. And then the play, like, so they obviously –
Then you got the PI where you drilled Simpson, and it was a duck. And if your DB just turns around, it's a flailing incompletion. And instead, he doesn't, and he runs into Ryan Williams as Ryan Williams comes back. There's no way Ryan Williams is getting to that ball, but it's still a PI.
It's how Ryan Williams creates offense for that team a lot. Like I've seen it many, many times where like a ball is like thrown poorly or underthrown, and all he does is just run back into the defender and draw a PI. He does that a lot. But
go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Good.
It was just unbelievable to watch, like from start to finish. The defense was flying around. We were getting to Simpson. We were getting pressure. We were getting sacks. We had a pick. We had the blocked punt. All three phases. We ran the ball well. We got down to the pass game without Drew Bobo, without Noah Thomas. Without, with Chauncey Bowens like on a flat tire, it seemed like. With Nate Frazier getting thrown hospital passes by Gunnar Stockton. With all these things, we took care of business. Proud is the only way that I can describe how I feel when it comes to this team this year. Because of where we started to where we are now. If there was an award for most improved,
for sure.
I think that it would be us. Because there is – like our ascension has been unbelievable with the roster that we had. Kirby's had these guys bought in, playing their asses off. Bobo has improved the play calling week after week. The execution has elevated week after week. The toughness, the physicality has just ramped up. It is unbelievable to watch. And to sit there and, even with the lead that we had in that game, so we've been here before. We've been here before. Like, we can cough it up. We can't do that. We can't let that happen. We didn't. We kept our foot on the gas. We put our foot on their throat, and we stomped, and we took care of business. It was just so fun to watch.
So it was a big rematch, and apparently rematches are a thing now because we're going to have multiple rematches in the college football playoff now that the field has been announced. And you guys, by virtue of that win against Alabama in the SEC championship yesterday, you guys pulled the number 3 seed. I still think you guys should have taken the number 2, and Ohio State should have been 3rd, possibly even 4th. To me, I think it should have been the top 3 conference champions. I think that there's nothing in Ohio State's resume that says they deserve to be ahead of Texas Tech or Georgia.
Yeah.
They're strictly where they are by virtue of the fact that they have been number 1 all year.
And they didn't want to rematch Ohio State, Indiana, like that.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
But you don't want to rematch Ohio State and Indiana, but
I don't disagree.
We're going to rematch Oklahoma and Alabama.
Yeah,
they're going to rematch Tulane and Ole Miss, and then Ole Miss and Georgia in the second round, provided Ole Miss takes care of business. We can rematch all those to where we can winnow the SEC field down by 2 teams within 2 rounds. But let's not have Indiana and Ohio State play each other. Well, if that's the case, then bump Ohio State out of the top 5 and have them. I don't know. It's just it's weird.
There's a lot to talk about.
There's a lot of deference to and I get the idea of not dramatically harming and influencing teams that played in these conference championship games. But here's the thing. So, like, I get what they did. I get what they did with Alabama. Like, that makes sense. That's true to form with what they did last year and what they've done before, where they don't
BYU dropped them for losing, though.
Right. So they did. They should have, though, taken it into a little bit of account, like how they are playing lately and how this is more of an indication of the trajectory of Alabama right now. Yeah. But doing what they did there and then doing what they did to BYU, if BYU gets bumped out by losing again convincingly to Texas Tech, why are we – I understand if you want to say, like, okay, well, relative to Miami and Notre Dame, Alabama's not going to fall back behind them because they lost, because Miami and Notre Dame didn't have to play. Here's the thing. Georgia did have to play. Georgia had to play a tough game, and Georgia won their conference. Why is Ohio State not falling behind Georgia? And Texas Tech had to go win a conference championship game, and they dominated their conference championship game. Why is Ohio State still ahead of Texas Tech? So that's my gripe here is, like, I get not penalizing teams for playing in a conference championship game relative to teams who didn't. But relative to teams who did and who won their conference championship, Ohio State should be 4th at best.
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue too hard on it. I think 4th at worst also, right? Because I wouldn't put Oregon ahead of them. Certainly wouldn't put Ole Miss or A&M. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But
yeah, I didn't foresee Ohio State falling all the way beyond 4. Like, wherever they ended.
4 is where they belong. And I'm sorry if that means that Indiana and Ohio State have to play each other again. It's a little bit, they're talking out of both sides of their mouths, because they claim that they didn't try to wedge Miami in because of the ACC not having a representative. They claimed to just finally realize that Miami beat Notre Dame. Can we get into
that? Can we talk about the big elephant in the room?
But let me finish this point, though, because they claim those things, right? That the thing about Miami, but they obviously are goal-seeking away from having Indiana and Ohio State play each other in the semifinals.
Well, I think that also,
and that's not right. Like, what should have, if they're going to make all these SEC teams play each other before we get to the semifinals to knock each other out, then Ohio State and Indiana, if we're really just ranking these teams and we're not paying any attention to conference affiliation, and you can just have Alabama play Oklahoma in the first round and Ole Miss play Georgia in the second round, then why can't Ohio State and Indiana just be ranked according to how they should be ranked? And why is Ohio State, for losing their conference championship game, ranked ahead of 2 teams who won their conference championship games?
Yeah.
when Ohio State has no other victories against teams that are in the field. The best win they have all year is against a Texas team that lost to Florida and is, what did they finish? 13th, 15th, whatever it is. So I think it's a little silly, but let's get into the Miami Notre Dame nonsense, the hypocrisy there. And look, shout out to them for the voodoo dolls that the Alabama people have and that the Notre Dame people have. The Alabama people must have better voodoo dolls because they somehow found a way to keep their name in the tournament, and Notre Dame miraculously found their way out because Notre Dame and Alabama seem to, no matter what it is, if there's a tiebreaker between Notre Dame, Alabama, and somebody else, Notre Dame and Alabama are winning that tiebreaker.
Dude, let me tell you something. Notre Dame fans, you did not get screwed by Miami. You got screwed by Alabama. Let me be very clear. You got screwed by Greg Sankey. You got screwed by Alabama. You got screwed by 3-loss Alabama.
Yeah.
And also you got screwed by the committee in the sense of like they should not have propped Notre Dame up the way they did this season, knowing that Miami had the head-to-head this entire time.
Yep.
Like that never went away. That literally happened the first week of the season. We knew this is we talk about, Josh Pate talks about data points. You can't talk about, Notre Dame's playing their best ball right now. Well, that's great. They kicked the shit out of bad teams. Congratulations. But they played on the same field, and you have to honor that result. Regardless of if they were to play again right now, what would happen? Maybe Notre Dame would beat them, but you can't go off of maybe, shoulda, woulda, coulda. What happened is Miami beat Notre Dame. And it's kind of silly that you had to wait for BYU to fall out to be like, we didn't realize how close Notre Dame and Miami's like stats were when it came to like strength of record, strength of schedule, all that shit. And then now we're all of a sudden, we just realized that head-to-head is what matters now. It should matter. It always should have mattered. I've said that since for like a long time now. But like, it should have always been apparent in the way they were ranking these teams. Instead of at the final minute, you pull the rug out from under Notre Dame, and you pull Notre Dame out to let Alabama in. And I think Miami also gets in because, like I said, there would be no ACC representation otherwise. This was the literal ACC doomsday scenario that could have been playing out. That has been playing out for the last couple of weeks. That the ACC cannibalizes itself where it's either nobody gets in or they shoehorn Miami in, and this is exactly what they did. And I'm not even going to argue that Miami didn't really deserve it. Like, because of ACC tiebreakers, they didn't end up in their conference championship. But I think if UVA wins their conference championship, they are one of the top.
And it may give them the excuse to leave Notre Dame in, and
yes, I think so. And I think that like Miami falls out, like they're because they wouldn't put 2 ACC teams in. I just don't buy it.
And that's why I think they're kind of lying to everyone, including themselves, when they say that they didn't goal seek towards having an ACC rep.
This is also the first time ever that I can remember actually seeing Notre Dame get punished for not being in a conference, for playing we always talk about all the time. That schedule they've been playing since 1960, Stanford, Notre Dame. Yes, USC was ranked when they played, but where's USC now? My point remains. You talk about also common opponents. Miami beat Pitt worse than Notre Dame did on the exact same field. People forget about that all the time. And so.
And Miami beat them head to head,
Miami beat them head to head.
I know that there's this thing about like playing them when they played them and all that kind of stuff, but it's the same thing. I would have said the same thing if it would have been a Texas Ohio State head to head thing. Like it doesn't matter when you played, because like if that's the case, if we're gonna say like, oh well, that doesn't count because it was week 1, well then why on earth would you dare schedule that game? Because look what it did to Texas. Texas is absolutely in this field if they don't play Ohio State week 1.
Yeah, they play some cupcake, which is stupid because us as the fans, I really enjoy the opportunity to watch Texas A&M go to South Bend at night and play.
Yeah.
Or, Notre Dame go down to Miami on like the Sunday, like week 0. Or big noon kickoff, Texas and Columbus. Like those are games that I really, really enjoy. And to say they're being punished for it, I would rather say that they're being punished for losing to a shitty Florida team.
Yeah.
Not a shitty Florida team, but then rather than losing by 7 to Ohio State.
But they are being punished for losing to Ohio State by 7 because if they hadn't played Ohio State, their loss to a shitty Florida team would not have mattered because they'd have 2 losses and they'd be in this field. Because if Miami is in this field after losing to Louisville and SMU, neither of them is now. Granted, they're better than Florida for sure. But look at Texas's wins. Texas has more quality wins than Miami does. Miami has the one win against Notre Dame. They beat Florida, but they did that at home. They also beat they also beat Notre Dame, but in Coral Gables. So, like, Miami playing these games at home, Texas going on the road and having to play that game in Columbus week 1 against the defending national champions, right? And then having to go into the swamp and play Florida. And I know that Florida team has not played well, but you look at how they played in the swamp this year versus how they played on the road, 2 completely different teams. And then, Alabama's sitting here with a loss to a crappy Florida State team. And it was in week 1. And for some reason, we're just
ignoring that. They've ignored that loss the entire year, and Alabama fans know that loss. Like, it happened, dude.
It happened.
You guys,
and now we're seeing the evidence that was Exhibit A was exposed. It's like, you ever watch one of those movies where, like, at the very beginning they like make it really obvious like who the killer is, but then they throw a whole bunch of mud in the water and make you think it's all kind of other people, and then it just ends up being that same person, but they've done such a good job of leading you in 15 different directions that you can't remember that glaring piece of evidence from episode 1 or from the first 5 minutes of the movie. That's how Alabama is. Like, it's like they're just like, no, but like the same thing that plagued them in that game against Florida State, their difficulty running the ball and stopping the run is what did them in against Oklahoma, and it did them in yesterday with you guys.
My honest opinion is that Alabama should have been out and Notre Dame could have taken their spot.
I don't believe Alabama deserves to be in this field.
No, I don't.
Just the way they're playing right now.
Notre Dame in. And I'll even go to a step further, and like, no disrespect to Tulane and JMU, you could kick both of them out and put like Vandy, Texas, Notre Dame. Like, you could have easily, but that's a whole different story for a whole different day.
So let's get into this though, because the other thing that's been criticized is the conference championship participant selection process, which I think we have to bring into question for every conference, not just the ACC. Because yes, while it looked idiotic as hell to have a 7-5 Duke team win the ACC and give them no chance of their conference champion being in this field because they were going to be ranked behind James Madison and Tulane. And let's not forget, Tulane actually beat Duke. Tulane, say all you want to say about Tulane and how bad they are and everything. Tulane beat the brakes off of the ACC champion.
Was that in Durham or was that in New Orleans?
No, it was in New Orleans.
Okay.
But the point remains, though.
Yeah.
And look, let's be real. Tulane probably played their worst game of the season when they lost to Ole Miss. I don't know. It's a close toss-up between that one and the UTSA loss. But they've also played really well at times. And New Orleans and Oxford aren't that far apart. So I expect there to be quite a Tulane contingent in Oxford in a couple of weeks for that game.
Dude, it's going to be something, man. We talk about that game. You have Ole Miss, whose former head coach, Lane Kiffin, is not allowed to coach. And coaching against John Summerall, who is the current head coach of
Florida.
The Florida Gators. And it's actually funny. Chad and I were talking about it pre-show. Bob Chesney and John Summerall are both on record on this recap that they're doing as we speak, or recap. They're talking about like the games. And Summerall is openly admitted, which there's no secrets, but like he's like, yeah, I'm going out to Gainesville for a little bit, a few days, figure some stuff out. Then I'm coming back to be with the team to prep for the playoff. Chesney, yeah, I'm going out to Los Angeles for a couple days, figure some stuff out. Then I'm coming back to be with the team. Both fine.
They're both serving both roles at the same time.
Yes,
and also,
the teams are happy as hell to have them to coach it out. You know what I mean?
Let's also point out the hypocrisy of Ole Miss practically begging for Charlie Weiss to be able to come back and coach for Ole Miss as their offensive coordinator while he is LSU's offensive coordinator, because you can't have Lane Kiffin coach because he might rob players and coaches, but you can send Charlie Weiss Jr., even though he's LSU's offensive coordinator, because he won't get to talk to the players or the coaches and bring anybody with him, even though they've already taken almost the entire staff. And I would not be surprised at all if you see Trinidad Chambliss, if he gets his extra year of eligibility, and Kewan Lacey, and possibly some others. I think there's a receiver or two that could be coming to LSU as well. But I want to get back to the point I was making about, because we got into this thing about Tulane and Ole Miss and the coaches and all, but we were talking about the conference championship selection process, right? So Miami was in like a 5-way tie with SMU, Duke,
Georgia Tech, Pitt.
Georgia Tech. There was somebody else.
Was it at Pitt? No, was it
Pitt.
not?
Yeah, no, it was Pitt.
Yeah.
So Miami, all those 5 teams had 2 losses in the ACC. Virginia was the only 1-loss team. Now, the team that, because of their criteria, it's this common opponents thing. We went over it on last episode. Duke's opponents had a 500 record, conference record. Their conference opponents. Everybody else, the closest next to them, was like a 43% winning percentage in the conference. And so that's how they selected their conference championship participants. Duke won that tiebreaker, and they were the best 2-loss team according to those criteria. So a lot of criticism was given to, like, well, they should have a different way. What if Miami's in that game? Miami probably boat races Virginia, and then we're not even having this conversation. Miami's the conference champ. They're probably actually, even at that point, maybe looking at, a higher seed than where they are. But they didn't have that opportunity, blah, blah, blah. It's stupid and ridiculous. Well, okay, let's take a step back then, and let's talk about how the SEC chose Alabama, because we ignore a Florida State loss. We ignore the fact that Texas A&M has 1 loss, and it was to Texas, who is much better than Florida State. Now, they lost to Florida, who's about the same as Florida State. Actually, I think Florida's a little better because they beat the piss out of Florida State in that last game of the season. But also Ole Miss is there. Ole Miss's only loss is to Georgia, the eventual conference champion. Could we have had a rematch of that game instead? It's all fine if we want to talk about Miami and how they might have been left on the outside looking in at this thing. But the reality is, should a 2-loss Alabama have been playing in the SEC championship, even though one of those losses was out of conference? Or should the SEC, like people are saying the ACC should do, should they be picking the highest ranked in the selection process teams to be their conference championship participants when you have a bunch of 1-loss teams in the conference like they did? So it's just funny, like the tiebreaker criteria is kind of thrown around like that. And then you had the same thing with, Utah, BYU, and Texas Tech, where you have, until that last game where, BYU beat Utah, there was going to be a question of like who gets into that game. But BYU got it done. So there's clearly some stuff that needs to be fixed in this. I'm very happy to hear that some other folks are finally starting to beat the drum of like, this field is not big enough. I know Jeremiah doesn't want to hear that because he thinks we need fewer teams, not more teams. And I remind him that, if we had kept the 4-team playoff, Ohio State wouldn't have been in it last year and would not have won the national championship. So I think when you look at the field and you can see that Vanderbilt, Texas, BYU, and Notre Dame, at least 3, if not all 4 of those teams have a legitimate shot to make a deep run and maybe even win the whole thing. Because I think if Texas gets hot at the right time, the talent on that roster, if Arch plays, out of his mind, like to the top of his capability, there's a reason why they ranked that team number 1 preseason. And look, not for nothing, they gave Ohio State their best game in the playoffs last year. Texas is on the doorstep about to tie the game when Jack Sawyer hits that strip sack fumble with Quinn Ewers and takes it to the house. So I think expanding this to 16 teams, you can still have your group of 5 champs in there. You can have 5 automatic qualifiers, like your top 5 conference champs still get in there. And then you can just have everything else at large. And then people are probably not complaining all that much. You might complain a little bit about that Oregon James Madison round 1 game, the fact that Tulane and Ole Miss are playing each other again. But I don't think anybody's going to complain about getting a chance to see, a Texas BYU and a Vanderbilt Notre Dame or something like that as another first round matchup, because this A&M, Miami, Alabama, Oklahoma set of matchups, those are going to be some really good games. It just sucks that the committee did another thing that was very stupid. So you have Tulane, Ole Miss, and Oregon, James Madison. Either of those two games could have been the noon Eastern game, which would be 11 o'clock at College Station, 11 o'clock at Oxford, or what would that be? Probably the 3:30 game. That would be noon, 12:30 Pacific time.
Yeah, 3 hours behind.
Oregon playing James Madison at noon local time, and Ole Miss playing Tulane at 2:30 or at whatever, 11 o'clock local time. Not that big of a deal. And then we would have a primetime A&M Miami matchup.
Yeah, the fact that's not a night game is stupid.
Instead, Texas A&M Miami will be at 11 a.m. Kyle Field College Station time, and that is completely idiotic. Now, Alabama, Oklahoma, we get to see that one the night before on December 19th. That's going to be a primetime game, and that one should be great in Norman, Oklahoma. Norman's going to be rocking. And I honestly think this one could go either way. If Jam Miller comes back, and if Alabama kind of gets a few things a little more healthy and can protect Simpson a little more, they've got a shot. But I also could see Oklahoma like getting their stuff together. They've got 3 weeks to get ready after not having a game this week. Alabama's got to lick their wounds and get right back at it. They've got a game in 2 weeks. Oklahoma's had that other week to kind of start getting guys healthy and getting prepared for a playoff run. If Ben Arbuckle and John Mateer can kind of get things back to where they were early in the season, Oklahoma's dangerous because that defense is going to go wherever it needs to go. It's one of the best defenses in the country, possibly the best defense in the country. I think what we got to see last night was that Indiana did really well against what we think is a very good Ohio State offense, but we haven't seen Ohio State's offense really challenged against good defenses this year. So I'm not completely certain, what we have when we look at those. I know that Oklahoma has gone up against some really good offenses, and they've still managed to have a top 10 defense in spite of that. So I don't know. That's going to be an interesting 8-9 matchup, and then Indiana waiting for the winner of that one, and then Ohio State waits for the Texas A&M Miami winner. So that's the one thing where I think they may have. I think they kind of split the difference, and they said, okay, well, you're not going to play each other in the semifinals, but you're going to have the toughest second round matchups of anybody because you're going to have to play one of those. The chances of there being an upset and you get to play a James Madison or a Tulane are 0. You're going to have to play Texas A&M or Miami, Ohio State, or Indiana. You're going to have to play Oklahoma or Alabama. And we don't know, to be perfectly honest, I don't know what's tougher, Oregon or that Texas A&M Miami matchup, or that Alabama Oklahoma matchup, and then Ole Miss. I think we still don't know what we're going to expect from.
I'm beyond curious to see how this Ole Miss team shakes out. But I also go back to what you were talking about earlier. The fact, like ESPN, you own or have
the TV rights to this.
TV rights to broadcast these games. If I'm an ESPN executive, I am making a phone call and I am switching the time frame of these games.
Yeah,
like that is so idiotic to have. It's just like when they made Penn State not a night game at Happy Valley. They made it like a noon game. Like same thing. Like you need to think about that. Like you have the ability to absolutely flip that. I hope they consider that. I don't know if they can or will, but that's besides the point. Yeah, we got some good matchups. I just find it annoying that we're going to really be running back like 2 games that already happened this year. I'm really looking forward to that A&M
and then
Miami
a third,
game.
and then a third one when Ole Miss beats Tulane and you get Ole Miss
to play them
rematch and you get to play them again. Yeah.
I mean, and the committee is not sneaky, making sure that we have to play Ohio State. They know what they're doing. Like that's like the most.
Yeah.
They that's going to be obviously if we don't lose and Ohio State doesn't lose, then it's the most obvious thing in the world that's going to be the most watched game of the entire playoff.
Right,
and Ohio State.
Yeah, and while I think it would have made more sense from a fairness, deservingness, whatever, who earned it perspective to have Indiana and Ohio State as the 1 and 4, and then have the other 2 conference champions as the 2 and 3. Giving Indiana credit for being the only undefeated conference champ, but then giving the other 2 one-loss teams that won their conferences a leg up over the team that lost a conference championship and did not win it, would have made more sense from a logical who earned the right to have those spots perspective, right? But I kind of see what they did here with that as well, where they looked at it and they said, okay, we got to put Indiana against Texas Tech because that's the legit 1 versus 4. And you got to give Indiana the benefit of the doubt and have them play what I'm sure the committee perceives to be the weakest of the 4 teams. And then that means that you necessarily have to have Georgia play Ohio State to figure out who the other semifinal participant is. And that's, provided that all these teams survive their second round matchups, which was an over last year. So,
yeah, dude, that's I was going to talk about that. We get another sample size of what happens to these teams after getting so much time off, because it didn't bode well for us last year, but there was also a lot with the game getting changed and Kirby Smart's
Stockton
dad,
having his first start ever.
Yeah, Stockton's first start, Kirby Smart's dad passing away during the game. It was nothing was going well for us that game.
And you lost because of 2 plays.
You lost because
2
plays.
A sack fumble that set up a touchdown, and then a kickoff return for a touchdown.
So we get to go back to we get to go back to the Sugar Bowl. Again. What a shock! They love setting us out of New Orleans.
What's crazy about that is, as much as the Sugar Bowl has been this, SEC mainstay for decades, right? It's where our conference champion went for every year of my childhood and years before that.
Chad,
it is rarely an SEC versus SEC matchup. We had
true.
Alabama in the 2011 national championship there. God help me. But I don't know. Did you guys play? Where did you play when you beat Alabama and when you lost to them in the national championship?
When we beat them both in Atlanta.
They were in Atlanta.
It was all in Atlanta. Alabama has only ever been in Atlanta.
So then
every single time.
Yeah. So you've never played an SEC team in the Sugar Bowl. So it'll be another first.
We went out to the Rose Bowl. That was Oklahoma, but they were still
assuming Ole Miss actually.
So funny enough, I just realized that it's a
home game for Tulane.
Right. If by God's good grace, Tulane wins that game, they literally get a home game in New Orleans, which would actually be pretty sick. And then we get to beat, and then we get to beat the new Florida head coach. So that's just
right. There you go.
Send him down to
get that cocktail party started early, right?
Hey, buddy, this is a little preview.
So let's talk a little bit about while we're on this, because I know there's been a lot of discussion about what who belongs where and whatnot. I do want to bring this is ESPN's Power Index stuff, just so you can kind of see who ranks where, how, and all this kind of stuff. So strength of record, which let's go down to the bottom and see what they use. What does strength of record actually mean? Strength of record rank reflects the chance that an average top 25 team would have team's record or better given the schedule. See, they do such a poor job of actually defining. I'm a mathematician. What's the formula?
Yeah,
I want the formula. And also, I don't like the fact that it's just rankings. That doesn't mean anything to me. I want to see like the index. So what I want to see is like, is Indiana, let's say Indiana's like kind of the way that they do with baseball, where you have like the weighted runs created and WAR and all these types of metrics, where I like the like ERA plus and weighted runs created metrics, because it's an index off of an average player. So the average player is 100. It's kind of like specific gravity with liquids, where you have like water is 1, and then something that's heavier than water is higher than 1. Something that's lighter than water is lower than 1. So it's a density index. Well, you don't rank the things in order of how dense they are, because then it would be like, well, this one's 38 and this one is 12. Well, yeah, but they might be like 0.06 specific gravity difference from each other. So like, I want to see like, what is the separation between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and because you might have this really tight cluster and then a big gap and then another tight cluster. I'd like to see the actual raw numbers. The other thing I would like to see is, what's the damn formula? Because I'll tell you this much: FPI is idiotic. It's useless. It's stupid. I don't like it. I think it puts way too much on the preseason rankings, and how much, because it's still going into these things, and it's all this idiotic stuff like game control and everything. But this is the criteria that they used to determine who was going to be where. And when you look at the strength of record, FPI, and then you have the rankings, and then you have strength of schedule, you start to see like why some of these teams are ranked where they are. Texas Tech with the 53rd strength of schedule, and then Oklahoma's at 12, Georgia's at 15, Texas A&M is at 16, Oregon is actually at 17, but Indiana's at 27 and Ohio State's at 30. Ole Miss is at 41. So you see where, like, I can see where some of the, like, your Alabama and Texas fans are like, hey, yeah, but we, look at the schedules that we played. We played tougher teams, and then you get to Notre Dame and Miami, and you're sitting there at 44 and 45. It almost makes you think, dang, man, like yes, it would be cooler if we could expand the field to where then you allow BYU, Texas, and Notre Dame and Vanderbilt all in the field. And like Utah, it's like, okay, I get it. You're complaining, but like you had the 58th strength of schedule. So
what makes me, this is, I don't know, this is what has popped my head. I've seen this a lot on Twitter where Alabama fans are like, you lost the SEC championship, but we beat the SEC champions in their house, is what they are saying. Oh, like, what? You can't.
Yeah.
The
fact that they split is different from
circle.
BYU. Yeah, so like BYU lost both times.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they lost bad both times doesn't bode well for them. The fact that Georgia went and beat you in your house, that Alabama went and beat you in your house, barely, and then you turn around and beat the piss out of them. Yeah, it strengthens your case for that, top 4 first round bye spot, and it strengthens their case, actually, the fact that they beat you earlier in the year, for them having a tougher road to get to where they are. And also, like, if let's say you had played either an Ole Miss or a Texas A&M in that game, and then you beat them soundly, well, then Alabama is probably in the same spot that they're at. And I don't know what they do with Ole Miss and Texas, but they probably don't move them all that much either. The only difference is they probably would, if Ole Miss had lost to you again, and it had been worse than the really close game they played with you in Athens, they might have dinged them more than they would have Texas A&M for playing you only once. But Texas A&M doesn't have that strength of schedule. If you look at the teams that are in the top of the SEC, Texas A&M is similar to Texas last year, where they clearly had by far the easiest road of all the teams that were in the running for the SEC championship. I want to address something though. So Jeremiah said that the Big Ten went to that model instead of taking the winner of each. That's why they dissolved the divisions. We don't have divisions in the SEC either.
I think
Neither does
honestly the
neither does
SEC
the ACC.
tiebreaker is
Yeah, I don't think any of the other conferences have divisions. There might be
none of
one
them do.
other like obscure conference, but not the SEC and the ACC and the Big 12 don't have divisions anymore either. I'm not sure what you're talking about, and I don't think the Big Ten's model is whoever's ranked the highest in the polls, regardless of other
Ours is still
tiebreakers. I
that
think if you have
opponents
head to head, or if you
3%.
have other common opponents or something like that, those things still take precedence.
And that's why,
What were you
because
saying?
of the tiebreaker, and that's why, because of the tiebreakers, the SEC has, like, I'm pretty sure it is that opponent's win percentage or something.
Yeah,
Like, that's why it worked itself out that, like, Texas A&M only had to lose once to be out, but Alabama would have had to lose again to also be out. Like, it would have. That's like how it would have worked out. Like,
Yeah.
I'm talking about, like, Alabama would have had to lose to Auburn and that Oklahoma loss to be knocked out, not just one of those losses.
right. But
yeah,
what I'm saying though is, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world for the sake of. Now I get it. Like I'm more of a I'm not a big fan of the stuff that involves rankings.
me
As
neither.
much as
I'd
people
rather
want to
come down
make,
to like statistical tiebreakers.
yes, because that's why you play games.
Right.
I'm much rather everything be settled on the field. I don't like the
Yeah,
idea
I'd
of,
rather
and
be
even like
statistical.
with all due respect, like I get where Jeremiah is coming from, because I don't disagree that if we're going to have a 4-team playoff, or let's say we had a 6-team playoff, okay, I don't think it makes sense to just have like 6 different conference champions represented in there and not have any of the other teams, because clearly everybody doesn't play the same type of schedule, and that would be ridiculous and silly, right? And I understand that basketball, there are way more teams because it's all of Division One, which is like 330 some odd teams, right? Whereas we have like 136, 138 college football teams in FBS. But I do think that you can have an expanded field, have 16 teams. I have advocated for as many as 20 or maybe even 24. I would settle for 16, because I think if you get to 16 is what I've always said from like back when I was advocating for this in the 90s, when I was told that they were never going to do this because of the bowl games. Finally, they came to their senses and did away with that nonsense. But if you went to a 16-team playoff, it starts to matter less that you allow a Tulane and a James Madison in, because now you're filtering more good teams in. What we don't want to do, what I have a problem with, is when our filter is too small, we're filtering high quality teams out off of arbitrary criteria, in my opinion, because people just look at teams and say, I don't think those teams are good, therefore they shouldn't be in here, or this is bad, this is going to be bad for football, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a fan of like the people, because if any of us have learned anything, especially this year, it's that every time someone opens their mouth and says this team's not good enough to do this, or that team, like if we just picked based on that and we didn't actually let the games be played,
stupid eye test that people.
Where the hell would Indiana be?
Right.
Indiana's not even supposed to be here. Indiana was terrible for forever. Like they've literally, like we were looking at the stats, they've gone like 30 years or something without winning a postseason game.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you go back to like I don't remember what it's something in the 90s or something like that, 80s or 90s. The last time they actually won a bowl game, 91 maybe. Anyway, point I'm making is I would rather see the field expanded to the point that there's as little question as to like who is in the field can actually win the whole thing being possible. So like, say what you want to say about the NCAA tournament and how like, oh, they let too many teams in, it's ridiculous. Okay. But like every time an 11 seed makes it to the Final Four, I'm like, yeah, that's why you have that many teams, because clearly you can think that only the top 4 teams should be in there, but that's wrong, because the top 4 teams hardly ever comprise the top 4, the final 4.
Mm-hmm.
So the best we can do is expand it to the point where we leave no doubt as to not having filtered out the team that could be the national champion. I would rather filter in Tulane and James Madison than filter out Texas or Notre Dame, who could actually legitimately win this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what we think about their relative deserving a spot in here versus the teams that are in it. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like expand it to where they're in whatever that grouping is. So you get to we talked about those other teams in there. You get to the Utahs, Michigans, USCs, Navy, Iowa. Like I think, yeah, we've gotten beyond the point of you've lost so many games to teams that aren't even in this field that the point is moot. So I think 16 teams is a good spot to settle on. And I think there's been enough momentum in that direction. And you're starting to hear it finally from the national pundits that have been poo-pooing that idea for long enough that I think they actually are coming around. And I'm optimistic based on that.
Yeah, no, I'm just excited. I'm excited for, another playoff, another shot at a natty. But there were games that did happen this weekend. If you want to talk about that for just a little bit before we get on out of here.
Yeah.
We gave Alabama the ass whooping that I never thought I could conceptualize. Yes, it was without Jam Miller. Yes, it was without Josh Cuevas. But our defense, NLT overtime. But our defense got busy. I think we righted all the wrong in the regular season matchup. We took care of business. Alabama, -3 rushing yards. Gunner, 20 for 26, 156, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Very big. Nate Frazier, 13 carries, 52 yards, a touchdown. We also saw, I think, one of my favorite play calls of the entire we put him backup running back, Roderick Robinson, who has been injuries. He's very, very good, but they put him in at fullback, and they ran like a fullback. Like he was lined up at fullback, and he slipped out to the right, and we threw it to him. It was beautiful. I loved it so much. I love the chippiness that we played with. Like I said, our defense was flying around out there. I talked about the fact that we had a pick, 3 sacks, 4 TFLs. It was just a thing of beauty. It's something I never thought I could see happen. And I talked about it before, like this game with the age of the 12 team playoff, people worry about games not meaning as much and stuff like that. But let me tell you something. I would not, if we're going to win a national championship, I couldn't have it with losing Alabama twice in the same year.
No,
I wouldn't want it. I wanted this so badly. All the other Georgia fans, we wanted this so badly. And what I find actually hilarious is Kalen DeBoer was like, "Oh, you can't punish us for losing this game," as he was also advocating for the opposite and saying, "Oh, you can't let SMU in. They lost their conference championship game." Like when SMU got it over Bama
same thing he said last year. Yeah,
it's literally the opposite. So shut up, man. It's all politicking, and of course, like why would a coach not advocate for the team? You have to, right? You can't not. I think we were in Simpson's kitchen the whole day. And It's actually creates like this kind of downhill. And I told you that Ryan Williams would show up. He only had 2 catches, but he just was like so elusive. Just from start to finish, it was just something I was so unbelievably proud to watch. And yeah, the belt to ass, ladies and gentlemen, belt to ass. Yeah, here they still are. You can't kill them. You can't kill them. They're still in the playoff. But there were other games that happened yesterday as well, including last night, which for the first half of this game,
Sayan, aka Julian Simpson, I called this. I
thought for a second
once he played somebody who could actually play defense, that we were going to see what we saw on in that Big Ten championship game, and we saw him look a lot like Ty Simpson.
I don't know why we thought that like Indiana going out to Eugene and handling Oregon didn't solidify Indiana as a good team. Like that's like, well, like to me, I was like, wow, they just handled business. Like there was, and that made them feel legitimate in my mind at that point. But it's funny, right? For the first half, I'm like, is this the actual scenario in which we get the live version of why Diego Pavia is about to win the Heisman?
No joke. And look,
oh my God, this is the actual scenario in which Diego Pavia wins the Heisman sitting at home tonight.
What's insane about it is that it's not a performance where it's a 300 yards and 3 touchdowns and like heroic making this big run or a big pass or anything like that. It's literally like it's Pavia's to lose, and then Mendoza hits like a 35-yard completion with like 2 minutes left in the game that just gives them a first down and makes it to where they can salt the game away. And now it's just like boom, he becomes like the unbelievably odds-on favorite. Like it just like instantly, like one little first down completion, not even a touchdown.
Chad, we should have just canceled the Heisman this year. Nobody. We should just cancel the Heisman Trophy this year. Because, like, am I crazy? Like, not a single person really showed up and was like, "Yep, that's mine. I've earned this." Above a shadow of a doubt, above anyone else.
Really, like the guy who had a chance to do it was Jeremiah Love, and then he got dinged up in that last game because he could have, if he does anything close to what he did, like what they did to. Was it Syracuse? Who was it that they were playing a couple of weeks ago where he and Jadarian Price had like 400 yards and 6 touchdowns in like a half?
Syracuse.
It was Syracuse. Okay.
Yeah, when they put 70 on him.
Where they hung 70 on him. Yeah, like if he had another game like that, I think he would have been the one. But yeah, like you said, like the closest person to doing that was actually Pavia. He actually had a great game against Tennessee in his last game.
No, he did. He went out on a high note, and that was like, honestly, that Tennessee game was like, okay, maybe he does like. And if you think about it as a whole, Vanderbilt is not Vanderbilt in the last 2 years without Diego Pavia.
Not even close.
Period. It's not even a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think maybe like the Heisman committee doesn't like somebody who talks the way Diego Pavia does, like how confident he is, whatever. What have you? I don't care. Kid's confident. He's allowed to be confident. He's good. He plays good football. He can think whatever he wants about himself. I would have honestly probably given it to Pavia this year, but my real pick would have been Jeremiah Love as well. Mm-hmm. I think like that's unfortunately besides the point. So Indiana takes care of business. Is your undefeated Big Ten champs, which is just mind blowing. Mm-hmm. You know, Cignetti, especially after showing up the first year, potentially being made out to be possibly a fraud, supposedly, and then showing up and making and vastly improving upon last year in a year's time is insanity.
Well, and he didn't even he just kind of had like this matter of fact as he's like they win the national championship. I mean, they win the Big Ten championship. Like it's a close game. So like when they finally seal it, and he's just walking across the field, and he's just kind of like. Like not a smile on his face, just kind of like matter of fact, like going across to shake hands and all that stuff. And then look, for all of the things that we're saying about how no one really jumped up and how we would kind of advocate for Pavia or maybe Love, and that Mendoza didn't really like outside of that one third down throw really do anything where it really like blew you away. Like holy cow, what a performance! This is his Heisman moment. Like the fact that your Heisman moment is converting a first down, like it's all it is.
All the Heisman.
I love that kid though. Like I love Fernando Mendoza. Like the way he handles himself in post-game press conferences, in any kind of interactions with media, the kind of teammate he seems to be. Like those dudes, I think, love him. That whole roster loves him, and so like I could think of a worse guy to give it to.
Right, which is why I think that like this is exactly what I was talking about with Pavia's personality versus Mendoza's. Like that's part of it.
Yeah, for sure.
It's never going to be said out loud, but I think that's part of it for the Heisman.
Yeah,
whoever they may be.
So recapping the rest of the games isn't going to take too terribly long. This one was like BYU like marched right down the field. Like what was it, like 13, 14 plays and like 80 yards, just boom, touchdown.
And that's all
starting off
she
on the
wrote.
right foot, and then that was it. Texas Tech just owned them the
But talk
entire
about
rest of the game.
Talk about a team that like seems to love playing together. You know, you talk about like we talk about like Texas Tech being, you know, mercenaries, very most expensive roster in college football. Regardless of that, they seem to really be gelling, loving to play together. That linebacking core is so tight. You know, Jacob Rodriguez and the dudes with their mustaches and all that stuff. I think Texas Tech is very deserved of their final number 4 ranking, and I also agree with you that they could have honestly gone a little higher than 4. But all said and done.
Let's not forget that. Let's go back to this because I'm going to show you a little something. So we have 1, 2 Texas teams in this playoff bracket, and neither of them is Texas. So I just thought that was funny. Now, another crazy outcome that we did not expect. Like I don't think. I think people were somewhat surprised that Indiana did what they did to Ohio State. People were fairly surprised that Georgia did what they did to Alabama. But this, we talked about it, we joked about it
for weeks. It was the doomsday scenario for the ACC.
And it happened. And the committee still found a way to get Miami in, so the ACC didn't go over. But I don't know. Does this make $3.5 million a year worth it for Darian Mensah? I don't know.
Who the hell knows? Because it's funny though, because UVA beat Duke in the regular season, and then yet Duke still got came around to finish the job, I guess. Mensah, 19 for 25, 196, 2 touchdowns a pick. UVA quarterback Chandler Morris, 21 for 40, 216, 2 tuds, 2 picks.
That last touchdown, rushing, they went 96 yards in like a minute and a half to tie it up. They were going to lose that game, and I felt for those fans and for the players and everything. It's you really felt like, okay, that's it. Now it's over. Duke is screwed, and then Duke goes for it on 4th down in overtime and finds a way to complete the touchdown pass. And then Virginia throws like a trick play, like a double reverse, throw it across the field pass and gets it picked off. It throws it in double coverage too. Like that's one of those things where like, I'm pretty sure the way that when you design one of those plays, the first thing that they talk about is like, all right, if it's not there, run it or throw it away.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, a play like that is designed for the guy you're throwing to be wide-ass open because people get drawn upfield. And you know what I mean? Like, you do all that window dressing behind the line of scrimmage. Like, it's to try to suck everybody upfield. But shout out to those Duke defenders for staying disciplined on that ball, man. You know, because, UVA also got backed up, I'm pretty sure, because of a penalty. Yeah, didn't they have to start like on the 40 or something like that? Like,
well, they started off the possession and then made a.
No, I thought it was like it was on.
Was it during? Like, was it on?
No, it was while they were still on defense. I thought, or something like that. It was like a penalty they heard.
I don't know. I was going back and forth. I had the split screen up, and I had the Big Ten like post game. I was listening to some of the interviews and stuff there, and I was switching back and forth. So I didn't.
Yeah, but Duke is your ACC champions, and then ride off into the sunset and never be heard from again.
All right, so I gotta. All right, so since Jeremiah's here and he's coming, I gotta bring this up because I feel like we need to talk about this. He says, "I understand your basketball analogy. The college football doesn't have I know he means parity, like Pete with ITY. He's probably voice texting this. But anyway, like the difference between the number 1 team and 25 team in college football is astronomical. I agree to a certain extent. I don't agree completely, though. I feel like where we are right now, more than any time in the history of college football, the gap between 1 and 20 is a lot narrower than it has been in a long time. And that's where I think, because if we're looking at it, like, where do you get to the point where you're like, these teams have no chance of winning it? So I'm going to go through the where is it? We'll go with the strength of record standings. I guess I could do FPI. I'll do both. I'll do FPI and strength of record. All right. So Tell me, just raise your hand, Tyler, or stop me when I get to a team that has no chance whatsoever, like 0% chance of winning the whole thing. Okay.
Winning the national championship.
Right, the national championship.
Okay.
Indiana, Georgia, Texas A&M, Oregon, Ohio State, Ole Miss, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, BYU, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Texas, Notre Dame, Miami, Utah, Michigan, USC.
I would say Utah.
James Madison.
I would stop you at Utah.
And that's where we would be done. And I think you could maybe even make a case for BYU because they've got.
Yeah, I was going to say BYU.
They've gotten owned twice by one team that's in the thing. You know?
I'd say if you go to Utah, Michigan, I'd say no.
And if we go FPI, it's somewhat similar. It's Indiana, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oregon, Texas Tech, Georgia, Miami, Alabama, Utah, Texas A&M, USC, Ole Miss, Texas, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, BYU. So, all right, you want to know why FPI is effing retarded? Do you want to know who the number 17 ranked team in FPI is?
Number 17th?
Yep. Take just a wild stab. You're not gonna. There's a 0% chance you get this
in FPI.
Yep. And this is why FPI is useless.
I don't know.
Penn State.
You're right. I wouldn't have gotten that.
Fucking joke. Anyway, thanks FPI for nothing whatsoever. So that's why we don't use FPI because it's idiotic. But yeah, so I do think there's more parity where I think that you get to that. And I was using the strength of record or whatever. Even if you use the college football playoff rankings thing, you're going to end up in that same range where, when you get past Miami, Notre Dame, and it really just comes down to like, who has the dudes? Like, you got to have like that depth of talent, but then you got to have those superstars, those studs.
Well, people forget like how stacked Miami's roster is nasty. Like if Carson Beck doesn't play like a moron, they're pretty damn good.
Yeah, for sure.
The talent around him is insane. Like when I would say I think I quoted us saying like midway through this season, I'm like, Miami's no doubt about a third best team in the country. Mm-hmm. I'm on record as saying exactly that because when we weren't playing our best and it was Indiana, Ohio State still undefeated, I was like, Miami is bar none your best, your most complete team. So we'll have to see. We're going to settle it on the field. That's the most important part. I'm glad they didn't get left totally by the wayside. You know, the other games that happened, the Group of 5 championships took place. We know how those went. We see Tulane and James Madison representing the Group of 5. So I know a lot of people don't like that James Madison's in.
But they are because of that Virginia-Duke game. And then Tulane took care of North Texas. So North Texas is out.
They apparently said, we want a team from Virginia in this tournament. So we're going to put James Madison in instead.
And shout out to them. They beat Troy. Got it done.
One of the better stopping points along 81 South on the East Coast is Harrisonburg, Virginia. Shout out to James Madison. Is that all we got for them today?
But that's it. And I mean, so we're, if we go back to our original, our little ESPN graphic of the college football playoff, again, it's going to be James Madison, Oregon, Tulane, Ole Miss, Miami, Texas A&M. But before that, we'll get that Alabama, Oklahoma matchup. But unfortunately, we have to have an 11 o'clock in the morning Central Time, noon Eastern Time.
Why are any of the games taking place at noon? Like that, none of them should be at noon.
No, it should be. I don't understand why it's not like now. Okay, so I understand the Friday because you're having a Friday night game.
You can't have a Sunday game.
You can't. We're not going to do Sunday, and you can't have a Friday day game either. So it's Friday night, Oklahoma, Alabama in Norman, and then Saturday morning, Miami at Texas A&M in College Station.
That should be the night game.
And then Tulane, Ole Miss is midday, and then Oregon, James Madison is the night game because that's out west.
ESPN needs to fix that immediately. Like I don't know if there's fluidity with these,
Yeah,
but
it would be great if they could just
make
be like,
the
"Hey,
TV schedule.
there's something
They
scheduled,
flex
blah, blah,
games
blah.
in the regular seasons all
flex.
the time. Like they
Let's
don't.
flex the
They
Tulane.
sometimes like a lot of the
Even if
time
they
like,
just made it the 2:30 game, like
no,
it
like
would still be better.
a lot of the time, like with the big games that like are down the road, they don't
Mhm.
give like a hard time on those
Right.
games until you know like what the quality of the game is going to be.
Yep. And
Like
they
so we could
completely
flex
missed
the
the ball
shit
on
out of
this
this.
one.
You are literally controlling the
Yeah.
broadcast windows for these games. So
Right.
this is my please change that if you can. But
Yep.
anyway,
I do have
Oh, sorry.
one or two other things real quick. So number one, we do have a bowl game from what I understand.
Oh,
LSU will be playing Houston. I know I talked about we were supposed to be playing. What I heard was it was going to be the projection anyway was Illinois in the Music City Bowl in Nashville, but instead it's LSU Houston in the Texas Bowl, 8:15 Central Time, Saturday, December 27th at Energy Stadium in Houston, and it's going to be on ESPN. Bowl games are going to start coming out. We're going to start seeing what those matchups are, and then Jeremiah and Drew can claim that it's not a vacation with an exhibition game and pretend like it's the most unless of course the SEC sweeps the Big Ten, and then they'll be singing the tune that I've been singing all along. And I'll actually like agree with them at that point. I'll be like, yeah, you're right. These games don't mean anything. But
Iowa State set an interesting precedent though, saying outright they're accepting zero bids from any bowls.
That's
like being bowl eligible and saying nah, fam. Very interesting, and I think that my video and audio is starting to cut out. So let me not belabor any points here. We appreciate
you're coming through fine for me.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I do want to also say that like I didn't really pay attention to you guys' recruiting class, but Lane Kiffin held together. And shout out to Frank Wilson and Corey Raymond and those guys for like bringing LSU's recruiting class together, because we took this incredible class that Brian Kelly, his staff actually had built. Because I don't know how much of it Kelly was actually responsible for, because we had like a net zero decommitments. We had some decommitments, but then we actually flipped some guys when he got fired. So, and the biggest thing is we kept all the studs. We ended up with, I think, possibly, if not definitely, the best defensive line recruiting class in the history of college football. Definitely in the history of LSU. The number one overall recruit, Lamar Brown, who is a hybrid edge rusher / interior offensive lineman at the high school level. And yeah, he's listed as an athlete. He's the number one overall player in the country, and he's the number one athlete, obviously.
Wow.
But athlete is usually like a guy who plays like corner and receiver.
Yeah, DB, safety,
safety and running back or something like that. Or maybe he's a quarterback at the high school and he also plays safety, but he's actually not going to play quarterback in college. No, this dude is like a lineman. And he's like the best edge rusher in the game. And so they got that. And then they added the number 12 edge rusher, Trenton Henderson. And then they also added the number 1 and number 3 defensive interior linemen. So like it's pretty crazy to have number 1 and number 12 on the edge and number 1 and number 3 up the middle on defense. And then they inked Blake Baker for a 3-year, like $9 million plus deal. I'm excited about that. And, looking forward to see what Lane Kiffin can do in the portal to kind of round things out. And then you still have the late signing period as well, where you can add a few more guys to that class. But yeah, so exciting times for this show, for our two schools. And then one last thing real quick, the SEC. This is an SEC show, people. I know we have some Big Ten folks who come in and chime in and pitch in from time to time, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring this up. There are 16 losses on this board of teams in this field, right? 8 of those losses were to playoff teams. All right. The SEC dished out 6 of those losses. Ole Miss has 2 wins against playoff teams against Tulane and Oklahoma. Georgia has 2 against Alabama and Ole Miss. Oklahoma has 1 against Alabama, and Alabama has the 1 against Georgia. So the six of the SEC's losses are to teams that are in this field. And also, they beat 6 teams in this field. A&M is the only team in the SEC that does not have a win against a team in this field. Now, the Big Ten, on the other hand, 2 wins against teams in this field, both by Indiana. They beat Oregon and Ohio State. Ohio State has 0. Oregon has 0. The Big 12 has 0, and the ACC has 0 wins against teams in this field. Now, if you want to give Miami credit for the Notre Dame win, you could also give some credit to Ohio State for the Texas win. These are teams that almost made it in. Texas Tech would get a couple against BYU because they almost made it in. And then you got Vanderbilt back in there somewhere as well. So, you start expanding it a little bit, and but it's still, the SEC continues to weigh heavily on the so it just, again, speaks to the quality of competition that these teams in the SEC had to play to get to where they are.
Still annoyed that Bama's in, though.
What's that?
Still annoyed that Bama still made it in.
Yeah, I know. But again, none of this matters if we have a 16-team playoff, and then Alabama would have been in that regardless. And then you actually would have seen, I think you see a different seeding that maybe looks a little more representative of where I think we would all agree it kind of
There's less shoehorning.
makes sense for it to be. Yeah, you're not cramming teams in. I think then you would have like a very reasonable and logical Indiana, and then either Georgia or Ohio State, and then Texas Tech. Those are your top 4. Then you'd have Oregon, Ole Miss, A&M, Oklahoma, just like you have. You could have Miami, Notre Dame, Alabama, Texas, Vandy, BYU, and then your 15 and 16 seeds would be JMU and Tulane. And so Indiana would get to beat up on James Madison, and either Georgia or Ohio State would get to beat up on Tulane. And then you would have like the other one playing against BYU, and then you'd have Vanderbilt playing against the number 4 team. Like now I think you're actually like, holy shit, man. You could actually have BYU and Vanderbilt would be very capable of pulling off a first-round upset. If they're playing against Texas Tech, Ohio State, Georgia, one of those, I wouldn't put it past BYU or Vanderbilt to like find a way. So I think the more we can start moving in that direction, I think the better for college football overall. But it's going to be a great playoff season. I'm excited about it.
I'm very, very excited. I can't believe we're already here. It's another regular season has come and gone. Conference championships are over, and now we have this weird lull. We got Army Navy next weekend, which I think, honestly, that's something we didn't really talk about. And I'm going to spend 2 seconds on. I think as time goes on, it's going to be more and more difficult to give them a standalone weekend as the only college football game happening, especially like pushing these games out so far. You could really move them up, but you also like, I don't know, like it falling in line with like the bowl games, wanting to be like, and I feel like the Rose Bowl honestly is the most linchpin of them all because they demand to be the same time, New Year's Day, no matter what. We'll get onto that more when we talk about the previews for
There's a lot of stubbornness that's going to have to start like wearing away. It's the Army Navy, the Notre Dame, and the conference championships are probably going to be starting to get reevaluated a little bit. And then that Rose Bowl, all those different bowl games, and like how that
they like to be at certain times on certain days, like
right.
Rose Bowl specifically. Like the Rose Bowl was I think the sole reason what took us so long to like get into this kind of like playoff format because they had to remain the 5 p.m. Eastern on
New Year's Day.
4 p.m. Eastern on New Year's Day.
Yeah.
Whatever. Well, we appreciate y'all for stopping by. This has been the South End Zone. It's been a great year so far. Can't wait to see the run of the national championship is on. And hopefully it's us, man. We made it this far. Let's keep it rolling. Go Dogs. Lane Kiffin's down there and Baton Rouge taking care of business. Go Tigers. This is South End Zone. Like, share, comment, subscribe. We out.
Ladies and gentlemen. Our intent was to eat. Our intent was to come eat and be hungry.
We're taking receipts, and we'll see you at the national championship.